Welcome everyone. I am Lasse van den Dikkenberg. I am a PhD candidate in this project. And today I will talk about mobility and social networks during the Vlaardingen culture phase based on a study we conducted on the raw materials. As you can see, I will not only present my own research which is focused on flint, I will also address the procurement of non-flint stone based on a study conducted by Rob Haukes, Aaron Westra and Annemieke Verbaas. And I will talk about the provenance of ceramics based on the work by Jiska de Bruin and Dennis Braakmans. Now, I will start this presentation by introducing the research questions which we had in our project. After that, I will talk about the methods which we used, and I will address the procurement of ceramics, non-flint stone and flint. I will also discuss how the procurement of these different materials is embedded in specific taskscapes. We will end the presentation with a discussion on the appropriation of exotic flint in the Rhine-Meuse Delta during the Vlaardingen culture period. These are some of the research questions which we had with the project. We want to know where materials came from. We also want to know how the procurement strategies vary across different sites. Because as you already saw in the previous presentations, Vlaardingen culture sites are highly diverse. And this diversity also extends to raw material procurement. This was already noted in previous studies. Because of the multi-material perspective in the project, we also want to know how the procurement of these different materials is intertwined. Finally, we want to know how exotic imported flints were appropriated and incorporated into the local technological system. For the different materials, we had to rely on different methods. For flint and non-flint stone, we mostly relied on visual inspections. For non-flint stone, we limited ourselves to the identification of stone types, such as quartz or sandstone. But for flint, we have an extensive lithothek upstairs in room C124 if you need it. And this allows us to assign flints to specific sources. So here I put an example of that. You see Loesberg flint from the reference collection. Now this is a grayish flint which has a reddish zone just below the cortex. On the right you see a blade from Hekelingen, which is also made of Loesberg flint. As you can see, these look very similar. For the ceramics, we relied on XRF analysis and petrography. For the flint, we also used XRF analysis. So this is a study I did together with Dennis Braakmans. And we used XRF to distinguish between Spien and Rijkelt-Lanaje flint, because these cannot really be distinguished optically. Now, as you can see in the discriminant analysis plot, we were able to distinguish between these two flint types based on their chemical composition. The XRF study was conducted by Jiska de Bruin and Dennis Braakmans. Because we lacked suitable reference material from local clays, we were unable to assign the ceramics to a specific clay source. But as you can see in the plots, XRF data did provide several important insights. It can be seen that the composition of the ceramics from Vlaardingen and Den Haag-Steinhof were very similar. These sites likely used the same types of clay. At Hekelingen and Zandwerf we see more variation in the chemical signatures of the clay. This possibly signals the use of a wider range of clay sources at those sites. The petrographic study was conducted by Jiska de Bruin, also with the help of Dennis Braakmans, and this was done for the 4 key sites which we studied. The petrographic analysis will be published in a paper in Archaeology, but this paper will mostly focus on the technological aspects. For this story I mainly wanted to address the tempering agents which were identified during the petrographic analysis. We often see that stone is used as a tempering agent in Vlaardingen ceramics. Quartz was extensively used, and this is something we already knew based on the literature, because quartz temper is often mentioned as a typical feature for Vlaardingen ceramics. But what was surprising is that we also found a lot of granite in the ceramics. And this was previously assumed to be a specific funnel beaker culture influence in Vlaardingen ceramics, which was not present very frequently. But based on the petrographic analysis, we can say that this is also a typical feature for Vlaardingen ceramics. Granite was more commonly used at Zandwerf than at these other Vlaardingen sites. This is likely related to the fact that Zandwerf is located close to the Northern Morene deposits in Wieringen, where granite could be collected locally. The study of non-flint stone was conducted by Rob Haukes, Aaron Westra and Annemieke Verbaas. In the table, the results for the 4 key sites is summarized. We see that sandstone was predominantly used for stone tool production. The use of stone types is fairly consistent across these 4 sites. The only exception is Zandwerf, where granite is a lot more common than at these other Vlaardingen sites. Again, granite is mostly found at these Northern Morene deposits, which are located close to Zandwerf. For the other sites, it seems that the stone is often of a secondary origin, and this kind of stone could likely be collected along the major rivers, for example along the Meuse terraces or at the Utrechtse Heuvelrug or the Veluwe. It's possible that some of the larger granite tools were collected also from these Northern Morene deposits, maybe in Wieringen, but maybe even in Drenthe. Now I will zoom in more on the procurement of flint. We see that flint was often imported from far away. High quality flint was imported from Hesbij and also from the flint mines in Rijkelt and Spien. In addition to this high quality flint, low quality flint was also imported from the Utrechtse Heuvelrug, the Meuse terraces and the Veluwe. Northern Morene flint was mostly found at Zandwerf, because this could be collected locally at the Morene deposits in Wieringen. You might have noticed that I keep mentioning the same source areas in all of these different stories. The Utrechtse Heuvelrug, the Veluwe, the Meuse terraces, they all provide stone for tool production, also for tempering material, and they provide low quality flints. The northern moraine deposits in Wieringen similarly provided temper, non-flint stone and flint. It seems that sources further away mostly provided flint, rather than non-flint stone or temper. From sources such as Hesbij or Rijkelt, we see that people imported ready-made objects such as flint axes and blades. People therefore also exchanged goods. At the Utrechtse Heuvelrug or Wieringen we observe direct procurement. People go to those places in the landscape to collect flint and stone nodules. At sources further away we see exchange. Now these taskscapes, as we can call them, are therefore of a different nature. For high quality flint there's an important social dimension which we need to take into account when discussing these kind of raw material procurement strategies. This final part of the presentation will be dedicated to the appropriation of exotic goods. We have established that flint on Vlaardingen culture settlements was often imported from far away. In order to understand the meaning of these exchanged goods, we have to look at how they were used. To highlight this I put a modern example here. On the left you see a Moroccan oil lamp, and on the right you see a modern electric light. Now you might have similar objects in your home, but when you wake up in the morning I'm pretty sure that you will not light up your oil lamp. You will put on the electric light. The oil lamp is something you probably got as a souvenir, for example when you were traveling through Morocco. This other lamp is something you bought for daily use. So despite being fully functional, this oil lamp is kept separate from the technological system. You keep it as a reminder of a journey. This is what we call pieces of places. This other lamp might also have been produced far away. Maybe this lamp was even made in China. But you don't keep it as an exotic token of long-distance connections. You use it in your daily routine. And because you keep using it, you don't really perceive it as a foreign object. It is fully incorporated into your daily life routine. This difference between objects which are used and which are not used can be traced through useware analysis. This is a research theme that Annelou van Gijn explored in her paper Stones on the Move, where she discussed the appropriation of exotic flint in the Rhine-Meuse delta from the late Mesolithic until the Hazendonk III phase. The Hazendonk phase ends at 3400 BC, which is the start of the Vlaardingen culture period. And this made me curious as to how this story of the appropriation of exotics in this region continued. So I will first summarize the story of this Stones on the Move paper before addressing this issue for the Vlaardingen culture. Now, during the late Mesolithic, the first imported exotic Rijkelt flint objects are imported to the Rhine-Meuse delta. A good example is this large Rijkelt precore, which was found at Hardingsveld-Polderweg. This object is ready to be flaked, but instead it was deposited without ever being used for tool production. At these Hardingsveld sites we also see several imported blades made of Rijkelt flint. These are also unused. They were therefore imported but kept separate from the technological system. These objects were kept as pieces of places rather than being incorporated. During the early Neolithic Zwifterband phase we see that for the first time these exotic imports display useware traces. The tools now consist of typical Michelsberg culture-style macrolithic blade tools. At the site of Brandwijk, these blades now also display useware traces. But the traces that are found on those tools are not known from other Zwifterband tools. They are typical for upland Michelsberg culture communities. In this case, it seems that those objects are imported in a used state. So, although they display useware traces, they were not actually used at Brandwijk. They were imported as tokens of exchange, as pieces of places. During the Hazendonk phase we see that for the first time these imported flint objects were actually used locally in the delta. It still concerns these typical Michelsberg culture style tools, but now they were used actually in the delta. But although they were only used for a limited range of functions. They were mainly used for cereal harvesting, fire making and ornament production. So although they are now incorporated into the local technological system, they still maintained a special position within that system. They were considered objects which you could use, but only for specific purposes. This is where the story of the Stones on the Move paper ends. But considering that our project was focused on the Vlaardingen culture, so the next phase, we now had the opportunity to continue this story. As noted before, exotic imported flint is found on Vlaardingen settlements, and quantitatively imported flint becomes even more important than in these earlier periods. In this network graph, I show the connections between the raw materials from which these objects are made, so that's in yellow, and their past uses based on the useware analysis in grey. In red you see the main types of exotic flint, which are found on these Vlaardingen settlements. You see Hesbij flint, Rijkelt Lanije flint and Spjen flint. As you can see that these sources now have a central position in the network. This means that they were used for a wide range of functions, and we see that they were actually used for the same range of functions as these non-exotic flints. This is a major contrast with these earlier periods. So after a period of 2000 years of contact between these regions, we see that these imported goods are now no longer perceived as special objects, which should be kept separate in the technological system. From a functional perspective, they are now fully interchangeable with objects made of non-exotic flint. This changing relationship with exotic goods has an interesting modern parallel which I briefly wanted to highlight. From the 16th century onwards, we see that Europeans import Chinese porcelain. And despite being of a superior quality, which is at that time unmatched by European ceramic production, this Chinese porcelain was not intended to be used. It was imported only for its decorative and exotic qualities. Plates like this Van Lee plate were put on display. They served as tokens of long-distance connections, again as pieces of places. This relationship with Chinese porcelain changed in the 19th and 20th century. Nowadays you can also buy Chinese porcelain, but if you buy a cup like the one on the right, on AliExpress, you probably don't put it on display. You will likely use this for your morning coffee. And because this cup becomes part of your daily routine, you will not think of it as a foreign object. You will not think of China every time you drink your morning coffee. So we see that our engagement with these materials also changed our perception of these objects. This is similar to how the engagement and presumably the perceptions of exotic flint changed in the Rhine-Meuse Delta between the late Mesolithic and the Vlaardingen culture period. I briefly want to close off by summarizing the conclusions of this talk. We see that ceramic temper, non-flint stone and low-quality flint all derive from the same sources. So that's the Meuse terraces, the Utrechtse Heuvelrug, the Veluwe and these northern moraine deposits. High-quality flint, however, was imported from further away. Here it was also imported as ready-made tools, such as axes and blades. This imported flint is now fully incorporated into the local technological system. It's used for the same range of functions as non-exotic flint. The perceptions of these objects also changed, therefore. While they were initially conceived of as pieces of places in the late Mesolithic, they were now seen as objects which could be used in the same way as non-exotic flint.